Titans fans, we have breaking news to get to you here on Titans Today. We appreciate you watching as Dennard Wilson has been officially hired as the new Tennessee Titans DC. Now, this was a hire that was considered a home run hit. A lot of people talked about Dennard Wilson as being the next top defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens if Mike Macdonald moved on. Well, guess what? Mike Macdonald was hired as the Seattle Seahawks head coach today, and guess past that, Dennard Wilson was not hired as the Ravens DC. Instead, the Titans get him in what I think is going to be a home run hire. But I will tell you what, it is late. It is 9:20 here Central Time, and yet we're still getting out videos from you wherever we might be. So this is exactly why you hit that subscribe button. Doesn't it matter where I am, what I'm doing? I'm gonna get you all the Titans news wherever I may be. So hit that sub button, go down there, hit subscribe. I'm telling you, you're not gonna regret it. Plus, we're putting out Titans content every single day of the week. And we're getting you breaking news right when it happens. So let's talk about this hire here. So Dennard Wilson, he's a guy who has a little bit of, I'm going to say, relation to the Titans. Now, his coaching career began in Los Angeles as a defensive quality control coach. He spent 3 years in that role, and Wilson was actually promoted to defensive backs coach, which is what he was with the Baltimore Ravens. Now, you ask, where's the connection here, Jace? Well, during that 5-year tenure, he spent time with Titans' former coach, Jeff Fisher, along with Ran Carthen, who was actually working as the director of player personnel for the Rams at the time. So obviously a little bit of connection there between Ran Wilson, now Titans GM, and now DC, Dennard Wilson. So I think this is a huge hit because this guy was really heralded across the league as a top defensive coordinator position. And what surprises me about it is I thought he was going to be the Ravens DC. I got to be honest, as soon as Mike Macdonald was hired today as the Seahawks official head coach, I thought it was dead in the water. There was no way Wilson was going to leave Baltimore. He was going to be hired as the DC there. Instead, guess what? Ran Carthen, Adam Strunk, they strike a deal with him. They're able to bring him into Tennessee, and I think this is one of the best hires I've had. I'm honestly really shocked right now because Brian Callahan, I think, was a great hire, especially when you think about the Bobby Slowick news of him staying in Houston, the Ben Johnson news of him staying in Detroit. Brian Callahan was the best offensive coach besides those two. You get him. Now I get what I would say arguably is the best defensive coordinator guy. Now, some little bit of stats on him. I think that this is really important. He's obviously the defensive backs coach. How is that going to translate into a defensive coordinator role? Well, let's just say he knows what he's doing in a lot of facets. Obviously, he's been the DB's coach for the Rams, but he's also done it for the Jets, the Eagles, and then obviously the Ravens this year. And you want to talk about his effect on the game. Well, the Eagles last year, when they had Dennard Wilson, 171.6 passing yards per game. That was first in the NFL. That was first right there. This year, without them, guess what? 252.7 passing yards allowed per game. That's 30th in the National Football League. Now, when you talk about the Ravens and how they kind of accepted Dennard Wilson into them and basically what he's been able to do with the Baltimore Ravens, well, without Wilson in the prior years, and 229.4 yards per game was allowed back in 2022, 23rd overall. Now, with Wilson this year, the Baltimore Ravens were not only one of the top defenses in the NFL, they allowed just the 6th most passing yards per game at 191.9 passing yards per game. And you want to talk about how good this Ravens defense was? Well, it was first in the National Football League in terms of basically keeping people out of the end zone. That's the important part of defense, right? Not letting people score. Guess what? In the NFL this year, they were first in points per game in the regular season, allowing just 16.5 points per game. That is unheard of. And Dennard Wilson was a huge part of that. So I ask you this question. I know that I've kind of been talking high about him, but listen, I trust your opinion too. So I want you to get down in the comment section down below. Do you like the new hire of the new defensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans, Dennard Wilson? Get in the comment section and let me know because he could be a really, really big key for this Titans team moving forward. Obviously, a bunch of free agency moves walk out, but there's a lot of good defensive people on this team. You got the Nico Autry who could pretty much stay. You Jeffrey Simmons on the defensive line. Your defensive line is set, and now you have a secondary coach who comes in as the defensive coordinator and can really take over. So let me know in the comment section why for yes if you are liking this hire of Dennard Wilson, and for no if you do not like this hire, you wish there was someone else. If you ask me, I think it's a home run hit. Again, this was a big-time hire. I'm honestly, again, really surprised the Ravens did not hire him today after Mike Macdonald was signed by the Seattle Seahawks. Now, it's not just the fact that this guy is going to be coming into the Titans and kind of controlling a defense. I think it is almost somewhat of a cultural thing. He's done a lot of things and kind of is a mentor of a pretty big coaching tree. Obviously, Mike Macdonald was a big key in his success. Got to work with him this year, along with Jesse Minter at Michigan. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people who really like this. Obviously, Minter now will be with the Chargers or potentially the Ravens' new DC. This guy comes from a really heralded coaching tree. And I think that's huge when you're trying to rebuild an organization here with the Titans, because after the Mike Vrabel hire, I think there was a lot of question marks about, or excuse me, Mike Vrabel fire, what was going to happen? Are you going to try and go offensively? And if so, how are you going to hire a defensive coordinator? Well, now we kind of get those answers in some ways, because overall, this defense was not good last year. If you talk about the Tennessee Titans in 2023, it wasn't just the offensive line that struggled. They were middle of the pack when it comes to points per game. They allowed 21.6. Obviously, the Ravens, where Dennard Wilson's coming from, 16.5. So pretty good outlook there. You want to go into total yards allowed per game. Well, the Titans, again, very average in the middle of the pack there, 335.1 yards per game. The Ravens, just over 300, 301.4. Comparing these two defenses, there's a pretty substantial drop-off in terms of yards, points, pretty much everything you could ask for. That really just doesn't make sense as to how this is going to be really perfect for a lot of reasons. I think overall we're going to see a bunch of different ways that we could use Dennard Wilson in potentially using Sean Murphy-Bunting, having him back. I think there's a lot of ways that Dennard Wilson can come in here and ultimately change the game for the Tennessee Titans. Overall, though, it's got to be one of the top hires as a DC, especially now. Brian Callahan's trying to formulate his big opinion for the first time. So I think at this point, you're really trying to assess pretty much every move he's making. He talked about earlier how he was going to potentially draft a wide receiver over an offensive lineman. Well, now he gets a defensive coordinator hire that I know he was a part of because Rand Carthen talked about it. As soon as Brian Callahan stepped in the building last week, it was obvious he was going to be a part of the draft process, the free agency process, hiring his staff as he wants it. Rand Carthen was going to be there as support. And I think that Brian Callahan is starting to realize he has some leverage, and the Titans, well, I think they got probably the best defensive coordinator out there, at least in terms of what you're going to get from a higher ability. I mean, obviously, there's a bunch of people you could get in terms of Brandon Staley. He's interviewing for the Chargers defensive coordinator job. I'm staying 6 feet away from that. I don't want that anywhere near me, considering what happened to the Chargers this year. So it's very crazy to kind of talk about kind of how this Titans organization has, in the past 3 weeks, gone from absolute haywire, not knowing what was going on. You have the firing of Mike Vrabel. You have the talk of Derrick Henry leaving. To now you have Brian Callahan, who was technically, in my opinion, the best offensive coaching candidate out there. Obviously, you have Bobby Slowick. You had Ben Johnson. They stayed at their respective teams. And now you get Dennard Wilson, who is a prodigy of a bunch of good coaches. Work with Mike Macdonald, who is now a head coach, and you get him as a defensive coordinator, taking him away from the Ravens, who had a defensive coordinating position open. It's very clear right now that Rand Carthen, Amy Adams-Strunk, and now Brian Callahan and Dennard Wilson are all in on this team. And I'm telling you, it's good to be a Titans fan right now. So again, hit that subscribe button. Like I said, we're putting a lot of effort and making sure we're getting you covered all the time with Titans today. So hit that sub button down below, but that's all we got for you as always. Titans fans, tighten up and peace out.